Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are continuing to store this user object that we get back from authenticating our user throughout our application inside of the user context. So here we are inside of our signup form, where we will be indeed storing the user object that we get back from create auth user with email and password. One thing I want you to notice though is that inside of this component, we are actually also taking this user auth object and building out a user document from this auth. So some of you might wonder, why are we storing this user auth object instead of the actual document object that we have in our Firestore database? In this particular case, you're actually correct. We will be doing that later. But right now, what I'm practicing is really just storing this one user so that we get familiar with context before we actually start extrapolating out into the actual document. Because in order to do so, we have to create a new method for our sign-in form so that when we get this object, we also make sure that we, from this object, fetch the user doc from the authentication. So before we do any of that, we just want to make sure that we do that in our signup first. So one important thing is that we have already pulled in our user context and our use context. What we're going to do is we are going to pull off that same set current user. So I want to pull this off of use context from user context. This is pretty much just a repeat of what we've already done inside of our sign-in form anyways. And here I'm just going to call set current user. So now, whenever a user signs up for the first time, they're also going to have their user set inside of our user context. Now, what we want to do in order to test this is also build out what we're going to do with this current user. So here with current user, the primary thing we want to code out is that we want to be able to display a sign out link instead of a sign in link when a user is actually signed in. So here I'm going to say, when there is a current user, then what I want you to render is a different link. So here I'm just going to use a span, and the span is going to have the class name of navlink. This way it inherits all the styling of all of our links. And I'm just going to say that this is sign out. If the current user does not exist, then what we'll do is we will render our sign in link. Here I see that I have made a mistake like so. My brackets are off. There we go. Okay. So as I was saying, if current user, then we show a sign out. But if there is no current user, then we show the sign in. So let's go back to our application. We see that we haven't signed in a user. So we have our sign in. But once we sign in with this sign in, then we see the sign out button. So let's refresh. Earlier, as we know, we also linked our creation account to this signup. And when a user signs up, we will also store that user inside of our context. So let's test that as well. Here, I want to make a new user called Mike, and I'm going to use mike2@gmail.com. Password is 12341234, just as we had before. And once I hit sign up, this sign in should also change to sign out. So I sign up. There we go. I see that we are properly working. Context is storing this user, so everything is working as expected. Now what we want to do is allow this sign out to actually sign a user out. So in order to do that, we need to go back to our Firebase utils file. Here what we need to do is import in the sign out method. This sign out method, we want to create yet another interface layer function. So I'm going to say this is sign out user. And this is a function that calls sign out. And what sign out takes is, as you guessed it, the actual auth singleton, which is what informs the Firebase sign out method which user to find on the auth. Because remember, the auth is also keeping track of what users are signed in right now. So here we just copy our sign out user method. And what we're going to do is go back to our navigation component and let's import this method in so that we can use it. So I want to go import sign out user from the utils file, Firebase utils. And then all we need to do now is that whenever you click sign out, we'll just say on click sign out user. So what should happen here with sign out user? Sign out user will sign this user out. The problem though is that when this user signs out, we don't actually know whether or not the user is signed out based on our context, because our context has not hooked up to it yet. So what we should do is actually create yet another method. We'll call it a sign out handler. And here, this is just a function. This function is what we're going to pass into the onClick instead of the sign out user. Because what needs to happen is, let's make this an async function. What we want to do is we want to await what sign out user does. Sign out user returns back sign out. So this we can also make an async function, because what we want to return is the promise of whatever sign out returns back to us. In this particular case, we don't know yet. So let's see. So I want to await, and I want to set this value as response. I want to await sign out user. So sign out user is a function that's just returning us back whatever sign out gives us back. And because this method is most likely asynchronous, we get it as a promise. So we just want to get that value, and then let's just console log it. So now I want to save this. I want to go back. I want to open up my console. And here I see that we have our sign out. So we know that our user is still authenticated. If I click sign out, what we get back is undefined. So what we can do then, knowing that if we have successfully called our sign out user, we've probably succeeded, then we don't need the value, but we can simply call set current user to null. And now, if I save this and I go back, let's refresh. We have no initial value. I'm going to say mike@gmail.com, 1234, 1234. I'm going to sign in. We see that we have successfully stored our user. And now if I click sign out, what we notice is that I've signed out the user and I've also reset the context. So here we are leveraging this context in order to store our user, but also track the authentication state of our user. So hopefully you can see how easy it is to leverage this context in order for us to keep track of some value that we get from an API and then use it internally in our application. So here though, we know how context works, but we can actually optimize our code for Firebase a little bit. Because what we're doing here, as you'll notice, is that we're relying on code that's spread out throughout multiple parts of our application. The sign in form, the sign up form, as well as the navigation component in order to track this user authentication state. Luckily for us, we can actually consolidate all of this in one place. And this is using a new method that we get back from Firebase, which allows us to actually observe whenever authentication changes. So when a new user signs in or whenever a user signs out, we can actually track all of that in one place. And I'll show you how that works in the next video. So I'll see you in the next video.